6 months after the ban began, the galaxy decided to make an example. New Providence was a small colony world at the edge of human space. 12,000 people lived there. Farmers, scientists, teachers, children. They had come to build new lives on a new world. The planet had clean air, good soil, and fresh water. It was supposed to be a place of hope. Governor Sharon Grant ran the colony. She was a practical woman with short gray hair and a voice that could calm a room full of frightened people. She had handled floods and food shortages and power failures. She thought she had seen every problem a colony could face. She was wrong. The alien fleet appeared without warning. 47 warships from 9 different species dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the planet. Their weapons powered up immediately. The sky filled with the glow of charging energy cannons. Sharon stood in the colony's communication center and tried to make contact. Her aide, a young man named Benjamin Cole, stood beside her with sweat running down his face. "This is Governor Sharon Grant of New Providence Colony," she said into the microphone. "You are entering human territory without permission. Please explain why you are here." The response came from a Krelian admiral. The Krelians were an insectoid species with hard shells and multiple eyes. They did not show emotion on their faces, but their voice was cold. "Human colony, you have been selected for removal. This world has been claimed by the Galactic Assembly. You have 1 day to evacuate all personnel. Anyone who remains will be destroyed." Benjamin's mouth fell open. "They cannot do this. This is our world. We have legal rights under the settlement agreements." The admiral continued speaking as if Benjamin had not said anything. "The settlement agreements no longer apply to humanity. Your species has no rights under galactic law. Comply with this order or face destruction." The transmission ended. Sharon sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking. 12,000 people. Families who trusted her to keep them safe. And she had 24 hours to get them all off the planet. "Contact Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them what is happening. Then start the evacuation. We are not going to give them an excuse to fire early." The next 18 hours were the worst of Sharon's life. Transport ships that were designed to carry 200 people were packed with 400. People left behind everything they owned. Houses, farms, businesses, memories. Some people cried. Some people screamed at the sky. Most just walked in silence, carrying whatever they could hold in their arms. Children asked their parents why they had to leave. Parents did not know what to say. Benjamin organized the loading of the last transport. He had not slept in 20 hours. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking, but he kept working. "That is everyone," he said finally. "The colony is empty." Sharon looked at the town she had helped build. The streets she had walked every day. The gardens that the children had planted last spring. All of it would be gone soon. "Get on the transport," she told Benjamin. "I will be right behind you." She took one last look at her world. Then she turned and walked away. The last transport lifted off 18 hours and 12 minutes after the ultimatum began. It cleared the atmosphere with seconds to spare. Then the fleet opened fire. They did not just destroy the colony. They burned the entire continent. Kinetic. Bombardment hammered the surface first, creating craters miles wide. Then plasma weapons turned the soil to glass. Finally, molecular disruptors erased any trace of human presence down to the atomic level. When they were finished, nothing remained. Not a building, not a tree, not a blade of grass. The land where 12,000 humans had lived was now a scorched wasteland that would not support life for centuries. The assembly broadcast the destruction across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every communication channel showed the same footage. The message was simple and clear. This is what happens to humans who do not comply. On Earth, Lisa Monroe. Watch the footage in a room full of silent government officials. General Clark stood beside her with his fists clenched so tight his knuckles had turned white. "That was their demonstration," he said. His voice was rough with anger. "They wanted us to see what they could do to us." Lisa nodded slowly. She felt sick to her stomach, but her mind was still working. "They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to understand that the ban is real. Did it work?" Lisa thought about the question. Fear was one reaction to what she had just seen. And yes, she was afraid. Anyone would be afraid after watching there. People driven from their homes and their world turned to ash. But she also felt something else. Something that burned beneath the fear like a coal that refused to go out. "It worked," she said, "but not the way they wanted." General Clark turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "They showed us what they can do. They showed us how powerful they are. They showed us that they are willing to destroy everything we build." Lisa's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "But they also showed us something else. They showed us that they are desperate." "Desperate?" "This level of violence does not match their normal behavior. The assembly is cautious. They plan everything. They do not destroy colonies just to make a point. This is not strategy. This is fear." Lisa stood up and faced the general. "They are not just afraid of what we might do someday. They are afraid of what happens if they do not stop us now. Before we become too powerful to stop." General Clark stared at her for a long moment. "You think we could become more powerful than them?" "I think they believe we could. And I think whatever they see in us that scares them so badly, they decided it was worth destroying a world to try and prevent it." The room remained silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Finally, a young officer spoke up. "What do we do now?" Lisa looked at the footage still playing on the screen. The smoking ruins of what had been a home for 12,000 people. "Now we figure out exactly what they are afraid of," she said. "And we decide whether they are right to be scared." She did not add what she was really thinking. That maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. Not by banning humanity, by making them angry. The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It was the oldest government in the known universe. Over 400 different species had joined it over time. They had rules for everything. They had solved problems that would take human centuries to understand. They believed they had seen everything the universe could offer. Then they met. Humanity. Captain Daniel Price stood on the observation deck of his ship, the Meridian. He was a tall man with gray hair in his temples and calm eyes that had seen many strange things in space. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Karen Walsh, stood beside him. She was younger, with sharp features and a quick mind that had saved their crew more than once. They were waiting for an alien delegation. The Valorians had requested an urgent meeting. They said it was about something that would change human history forever. The Valorian shuttle docked with a soft thump. Daniel straightened his uniform and walked to the conference room. Karen followed close behind, her hand resting near her sidearm out of habit. Ambassador Desic entered the room first. The Valorians were a reptilian species, covered in scales that changed color based on their emotions. Desic's scales were normally a bright blue, but today they had faded to a dull gray. Daniel had studied enough about their species to know what that meant. The ambassador was afraid. "Captain Price," Desic said through their translator device, "I bring news from the Galactic Assembly. I do not think you will believe what I have to say." Daniel gestured to a chair. "Please sit, Ambassador. Tell us what is wrong." Desic did not sit. The ambassador's three-fingered hands trembled slightly. 3 cycles ago, the Assembly voted on a matter concerning your species. The vote was something that has never happened before in our history. Karen leaned forward. "What kind of vote?" "It was unanimous." Desic's scales flickered with purple light. "In 12,000 years, no vote has ever been unanimous. Every species has always disagreed about something. Until now. Daniel felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What did they vote for? The Galactic Assembly has voted to ban humanity from all galactic affairs. Your ships may not enter assembly space. Your people may not trade with any member species. You may not communicate with us. You may not visit our worlds. In our legal terms, you are now a proscribed civilization. The room went silent. Daniel stared at the ambassador for a long moment. Then he laughed odd. It was not a polite laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came from deep in his belly. The kind of laugh someone makes when they hear something too ridiculous to be real. I am sorry, Daniel said, wiping his eyes. I thought you said the entire galaxy voted to ban us. All humans, everywhere. That is correct. Ambassador, we have only known about the galaxy for 5 years. We have barely started trading with 3 species. We have not started any wars. We have not broken any rules. We have done nothing except exist. Why would anyone want to ban us? Thesek's scales turned deep red. Because, Captain, in those 5 years you have terrified everyone. Daniel stopped laughing. What do you mean? I cannot explain it in a way you will understand. I am not sure I understand it myself. But the Assembly looked at your species and saw something that frightened them more than anything has, frightened them in thousands of years. They decided it was better to stop you now, before you became too powerful to stop. The ambassador turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, Thesek paused and looked back. I am sorry, Captain. I truly am. But the Assembly believes this is the only way to keep the galaxy safe. Then the ambassador was gone. The news spread across human space within hours. Every news channel carried the story. Every social media platform exploded with reactions. And almost everyone had the same response. They laughed. Headlines appeared everywhere. Galaxy throws tantrum over human success. Alien prank goes viral. Assembly vote called biggest joke in history. Politicians gave angry speeches about standing strong against alien bullying. Commentators debated whether the whole thing was a hoax designed to trick humanity. Some people suggested it was a test to see how humans would react. Nobody took it seriously. On Earth, in a small apartment in Boston, a young woman named Lisa Monroe watched the news with growing worry. She was 26 years old, studying to become an expert on alien cultures. She had spent 2 years learning everything she could about the Galactic Assembly. Her roommate, a physics student named Greg Palmer, was working on his computer and barely paying attention to the news. They are not joking, Lisa said quietly. Greg looked up. What? The Valorians. This is not a prank. Lisa pointed at the screen, where footage of Ambassador Thesek was playing. Look at the ambassador's scales. That color pattern means genuine fear. Whatever they voted on, they meant it. Greg shrugged. So what if they are scared of us? Lisa, we have been in space for less than 100 years. We are babies compared to these civilizations. They have ships that could destroy our entire fleet in minutes. What could they possibly be afraid of? Lisa did not have an answer. Not yet. But something about the ambassador's fear stayed with her. That was not the fear of someone playing a joke. That was the fear of someone who had seen something terrible and could not forget it. She pulled up her research notes and started reading through everything she had collected about the Assembly. There had to be a reason for this. Species that had existed for thousands of years did not make decisions based on nothing. They had seen something in humanity, something that had scared them so badly that 400 different species had agreed for the first time in 12,000 years. Lisa stared at her screen and made a decision. She would find out what that something was. Meanwhile, Captain Daniel Price sat alone in his quarters on the Meridian. The laughter had faded. The joke did not seem funny anymore. He pulled up everything he could find about the ban. The official documents, the legal language, the voting records. All of it was real. All of it was official. The galaxy had looked at humanity and decided they wanted nothing to do with them. Karen's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we are receiving reports from other ships. The Nexus trading station is refusing to let human vessels dock. They say the ban is already in effect." Daniel closed his eyes. So it was real after all. "Set course for Earth," he said. "I think we need to tell someone that this is not a joke." The stars stretched past the window as the meridian turned toward home. Somewhere out there, 400 species waited to see what humanity would do next. And humanity had no idea that the worst was yet to come. 3 months passed after the announcement. In that time, the galaxy began to show humanity that the ban was very real. The freighter Dawn's Light was a simple cargo ship. It carried farming equipment and medical supplies between human colonies and alien trading posts. Captain Patricia Dunn had made the same journey dozens of times. She knew the route by heart. Her navigator, a young man named Christopher Bell, sat beside her as they approached Nexus Station. It was the largest trading hub in this part of space. 17 different species used it to buy and sell goods. Patricia had always been welcomed there before. "Nexus Control, this is Dawn's Light," she said into the communicator. "We are requesting permission to dock. We have a scheduled delivery for the Deshan Collective." The response came back quickly. The voice sounded almost sad. "Dawn's Light, you are not permitted to dock at this station. Please turn around and return to human space immediately." Patricia frowned. "Control, we have a valid trade agreement. The Deshans are expecting this shipment. People are depending on these supplies. The Deshan Collective has canceled all agreements with human traders. This happened yesterday. You are not permitted to dock. If you come within 1,000 kilometers of this station, we will open fire. This is not a warning. This is a fact." Christopher's eyes went wide. He pointed at his console. "Captain, their weapons are powering up. They are targeting us." Patricia stared at the station through the viewport. She had docked there 100 times. She knew the people who worked there. She had shared meals with some of them. Now they were pointing guns at her. "We are leaving," she said quietly. She began to turn back toward human space. "And we are telling everyone what just happened." Stories like this came from everywhere. Human ships were turned away from fuel stations. Diplomatic missions were met with armed escorts that forced them to leave. Communication channels went silent. Trading partners stopped answering calls. The galaxy was cutting humanity off completely. On Earth, the government finally started to take the situation seriously. They gathered experts from every field to try and understand what was happening. Lisa Monroe received a call asking her to come to a secure facility in the Nevada desert. She arrived to find a room full of military officers and government officials. A silver-haired general named Raymond Clark stood at the front of the room. He looked tired and worried. "Dr. Monroe," he said when she entered, "thank you for coming. We need your help. You have studied the assembly more than almost anyone else. We need to know why this is happening." Lisa took her place at the front of the room. She had spent 3 months doing nothing but research. She had barely slept. She had read everything ever written about alien civilizations. And she had finally found something. "General, I think I understand why they are afraid of us." She turned on the display screen behind her. Images of human history appeared. Wars and disasters and triumphs and failures. "The assembly has existed for 12,000 years, Lisa began. "In that time, they have studied hundreds of species. They have mathematical models that predict how civilizations develop. They know how species should evolve based on their home world and their biology. And General Clark asked. And we break every single one of their models. Lisa changed the display to show a series of graphs. According to their calculations, a species from a world as violent as Earth should have destroyed itself before ever reaching space. We did not. A species with as many internal conflicts as we have should have taken 2,000 years to develop faster than light travel. We did it in 300. A species with our history of war should have used nuclear weapons to wipe ourselves out. We came close, but we stopped. The room was silent. Everyone stared at the graphs, showing how different humanity was from every prediction. They cannot explain us, Lisa continued. Their models do not work on humans. We survive things that should kill us. We advance faster than any species they have ever seen. We adapt to challenges in ways that nobody else can imagine. So they banned us because we are too good at surviving? General Clark sounded confused. They banned us because they do not know what we will do next. They look at our history and they see a species that cannot be predicted, cannot be controlled, cannot be stopped. Lisa paused, letting her words sink in. General, imagine you are a civilization that has existed for thousands of years. You have seen species rise and fall. You understand how the universe works. And then you meet a species that breaks all your rules. Would you not be afraid? A young officer raised his hand. Dr. Monroe, if they are so afraid of us, why did they not just destroy us? They have the weapons. Lisa nodded. That is an excellent question. I believe they considered it. But destroying an entire species is extreme, even by their standards. The ban is their way of containing us. They hope that by cutting us off from resources and technology, they can slow our development. Maybe even stop it entirely. General Clark stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the desert stretched to the horizon. Somewhere beyond that sky, 400 species were working to make sure humanity never grew any stronger. What do you recommend we do? He asked without turning around. I recommend we stop treating this as a joke, Lisa replied. I recommend we start preparing for the possibility that they might take more direct action. And I recommend we try to understand them better. Because right now, they think we are a threat. If we want to change their minds, we need to know why they think that way. The general turned back to face her. Do you think we can change their minds? Lisa thought about the question for a long moment. I do not know, but I think we have to try. Because if we cannot convince them we are not a threat, I'm afraid of what they might do next. She did not know how right she was. In 6 months, the galaxy would show humanity exactly how serious the ban really was. And nothing would ever be the same again. The meeting ended late that night. Lisa drove back to her hotel through empty desert roads. The stars above her were beautiful and cold. Somewhere among them, beings she had never met were deciding the fate of her entire species. She wondered if they knew how dangerous that decision would turn out to be. Not for humanity, for themselves. 1 year after the ban began, humanity had changed. The old arguments stopped. Countries that had fought each other for centuries started working together. Scientists who had competed for funding now shared everything they knew. Resources that had been hoarded were distributed where they were needed most. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united. Not because they wanted to be, because they had to be. The galaxy had given them a common enemy, and humanity had responded the only way it knew how. By refusing to give up. Lisa Monroe now led a special project called the Understanding Initiative. Her job was simple to explain but almost impossible to do. She had to figure out exactly what the galaxy saw in humanity that scared them so much. She gathered the smartest people she could find. Historians, scientists, doctors, philosophers. They worked in a secure building outside Washington, analyzing every piece of information about both human and alien civilizations. They worked 18 hours a day. They argued about theories. They tested ideas and threw away the ones that did not work. Slowly, piece by piece, they started to see the pattern. Dr. Marcus Webb was the one who found the key. He was a historian who had spent his career studying how civilizations rose and fell. He called Lisa into his office one night, his eyes bright despite the dark circles under them. "I found it," he said. "I know what they are afraid of." Lisa looked at the data on his screen. It showed graphs tracking how different species recovered after disasters. Wars, diseases, natural catastrophes. Every civilization faced them eventually. "Look at how the other species recover," Marcus said, pointing to the lines on the graph. They were slow and steady. Gradual curves that took centuries to climb back to normal levels. Now look at humanity. The human line was completely different. Sharp drops followed by explosive growth. Populations did not just recover. They exceeded their previous levels within decades instead of centuries. "We bounce back," Lisa said slowly. "Faster than anyone else. Not just faster. We come back stronger." Marcus pulled up more data. The Black Death killed 1/3 of Europe. Within 200 years, the population had doubled and the Renaissance had begun. World War II killed 70 million people. Within 50 years, we had reached the moon and created computers. Every disaster that should have destroyed us became a launching point for something greater. Dr. Sandra Liu joined them. She was a biologist who studied how species evolved. "It is not just our culture," she added. "It is built into our bodies. Our DNA repairs itself better than almost any species we have studied. Our immune systems adapt faster. Our brains can rewire themselves to overcome damage. We evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every single day. We evolved to survive anything." Lisa stared at the data. Everything was starting to make sense now. "They are not afraid of what we might do," she said. "They are afraid of what we are. We are the species that cannot be stopped. Every time they knock us down, we get back up stronger. They know that if they let us keep growing, eventually we will be beyond anything they can handle." Marcus nodded. Their models predicted we would destroy ourselves a dozen times over. When we did not, they did not know what to think. We broke every rule they had. We are impossible according to their understanding of how the universe works. Lisa walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, 400 species were waiting to see if their plan would work. They thought they could weaken humanity by cutting them off. They thought isolation and pressure would slow human development. They did not understand that pressure was exactly what humans thrived on. She turned back to her team. "We need to tell the government. They need to know what we are dealing with." General Clark arrived within hours. He listened to their findings without interruption. When they finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "So, we are exactly as dangerous as they think we are," he said finally. "Yes," Lisa replied. "But they are missing something important." "What?" Lisa pulled up more images. Not wars and disasters this time. Instead, she showed pictures of humans helping each other. Strangers rescuing strangers from floods. Enemies becoming friends after wars ended. Communities rebuilding together after earthquakes and fires. "They only looked at one side of us," she explained. "They saw our ability to survive and our potential for destruction. They did not see the other part. The part that builds. The part that connects. The part that reaches out to others, even when it would be easier to stay alone. We are dangerous, yes. We adapt, we survive, we overcome. But that same ability also lets us change in other ways. We can learn new ideas. We can accept different perspectives. We can grow beyond our worst impulses." Lisa met the general's eyes. "The galaxy sees us as a threat because they only understand part of what we are. If we can show them the rest, maybe we can change their minds. General Clark considered this. And if we cannot change their minds, then we will survive that too, Lisa said simply. Because that is what we do. The general stood up and walked to the door. He paused before leaving. Prepare a presentation for the Security Council, he said. I think it is time we started planning our response. What kind of response? General Clark looked back at her. For the first time since the crisis began, there was something like hope in his eyes. The kind that shows them we are not just survivors. The kind that shows them what we could become if they gave us a chance. He smiled slightly. The kind that makes them realize they might have made a very big mistake. Lisa watched him go. Then she turned back to her team. You heard the general, she said. We have work to do. Outside, the stars continued their endless journey across the sky. The galaxy waited, and humanity began to prepare, not for war, for something much more difficult than understanding. 2 years after the ban began, humanity was ready. They had spent the time well. While the galaxy thought they were weakening, humans had been working harder than ever before. Scientists shared discoveries instead of hiding them. Engineers collaborated across borders that used to divide them. The isolation that was meant to cripple humanity had instead forced them to rely only on each other, and they had built something extraordinary. The Constellation was the most advanced ship humanity had ever created. It was not designed for war, though it carried weapons. It was designed to survive. Every breakthrough from the last 2 years had gone into its construction. Shields that could absorb energy that would vaporize older ships. Engines that could outrun anything in the galaxy. Armor that could heal itself. Captain Daniel Price stood on the bridge. He was older now, with more gray in his hair. The last 2 years had aged everyone. But his eyes were still calm and steady. Karen Walsh stood beside him, still his first officer after all this time. She had refused every promotion that would have taken her away from his crew. Captain, she said quietly, we are approaching assembly space. I am counting 47 weapons locks on us already. Daniel nodded. Stay on course. The Galactic Assembly was holding its annual summit. Representatives from all 400 species had gathered at the central station. It was the biggest diplomatic event in the galaxy, watched by trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Humanity had announced they would be sending a delegation. The response had been immediate. Threats of destruction. Promises of annihilation. The Assembly declared that any human ship approaching the summit would be fired upon without warning. Daniel had ignored all of it. The first shots hit them as they crossed into assembly space. Energy beams that had destroyed human colonies struck the Constellation's shields and disappeared. The ship continued forward without slowing down. The assembly commanders grew worried. They brought more ships. They used bigger weapons. They threw everything they had at the human vessel. Nothing worked. Karen watched her console with something like wonder. They are hitting us with enough firepower to crack a moon. Our shields are holding at 92%. They needed to see this, Daniel replied. They needed to understand that we cannot be stopped by force anymore. The Constellation continued its journey until it reached the summit station itself. The massive structure hung in space before them, surrounded by hundreds of ships from dozens of species. All of them had their weapons pointed at the human vessel. Daniel brought his ship to a stop. Open a channel to the station and broadcast it everywhere. Lisa Monroe's face appeared on every screen in the galaxy. She had been chosen as humanity's voice for this moment. She stood straight and spoke clearly, her words reaching trillions of listeners across the stars. People of the Galactic Assembly, you banned our species because you feared what we might become. You destroyed our colony to show us your power. You cut us off from the galaxy to weaken us. And we have come here today to show you something important." She paused, letting the silence stretch across light years. "You were right about us." The assembly representatives stirred. This was not what they expected to hear. "We are exactly as dangerous as you feared," Lisa continued. "You cannot stop us with weapons. You cannot slow us with isolation. Every challenge you throw at us makes us stronger. Every barrier you build, we will find a way through. That is what we are. That is what we have always been." She changed the display to show images of human history, but not the wars and disasters the assembly had focused on. Instead, she showed something else. Hands reaching out to help strangers. Enemies sitting down to make peace. Communities rebuilding after tragedies. People from different cultures learning to understand each other. But here is what you missed. We are not just survivors. We are builders. We are connectors. We are the species that, when given the choice between destruction and cooperation, has always eventually chosen cooperation. Lisa's voice softened but remained strong. "We could fight you. We could spend the next 1,000 years proving that you were right to fear us. We could become the threat you tried to prevent. Or we could do something else. We could show you that the same ability that makes us dangerous also makes us capable of something beautiful. We could be partners instead of enemies." The assembly remained silent. Every eye was fixed on the human woman speaking words that no one had expected. "You banned us because you did not understand us, because we frightened you in ways you could not explain. But fear is not the only response to something new. There is also curiosity. There is also hope. There is also the possibility that the species you tried to destroy could become the best friend you ever had." Lisa leaned forward slightly. Her eyes seemed to look directly at every viewer across the galaxy. "This is our offer. Let us in, not because we are demanding it, not because you cannot stop us. Let us in because your galaxy has been stable for 12,000 years, and you have no idea what challenges are coming next. Let us in because you need partners who can adapt and survive and find solutions to problems nobody has imagined yet. Let us in because together, we might become something greater than either of us could be alone." She took a breath. "You witnessed today what we can survive. Now the question is simple. What do you want to build with us tomorrow?" The transmission ended. The vote took 3 days. It was not unanimous this time. Some species wanted to continue the ban. Others argued for caution. A few suggested that humanity's offer might be genuine. In the end, the ban was not completely lifted, but it was changed. A trial period was proposed. Careful contact with strict rules. The possibility of more freedom if trust could be built over time. It was not victory. It was not acceptance. It was a beginning. Daniel watched from the Constellation's bridge as the first assembly delegation in 2 years approached for formal talks. Lisa stood beside him, ready to begin the long work of building understanding. "Do you think this will work?" he asked her. Lisa smiled. She looked tired but hopeful. "I think we are about to find out what happens when the most adaptable species in the galaxy decides to adapt to peace." The future was uncertain. The path ahead would be long and hard. But for the first time in 2 years, there was a path at all. And that was all humanity had ever needed. A chance. The stars stretched out before them, full of danger and possibility. Somewhere among them, 400 species waited to see what would happen next. They did not know it yet, but they were about to witness something new. Something that had never happened in 12,000 years of galactic history. They were about to watch humanity prove them wrong. Not by fighting, by being exactly what the galaxy needed them to be.